sessions like will be lively broadcasted. As you know, you can join with the link provided in the Facebook chat. And then also you have to remember, most of the things we do in these sessions are exclusively for the benefit of the students. And of course, you can watch some of my previous sessions as well online on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to that channel, please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and go through the videos I have on offer for you. Then of course it's all part of your learning to obtain your proper AAT qualifications when it comes to your bookkeeping, or the full AAT qualification, like Emma has just said to you about. She has just become an AAT qualified bookkeeper, and she also started from her humble beginnings from level 1s to 2s and to 3s. And this unit is a very important unit because it carries a huge amount of basic understanding of your double entries, and then your books of prime entries, and so on, so on, so. And please remember, and this exam is one of the easiest exam comparing to the others on your level 3, so level 2s. And then also you have to remember, in this exam itself, the way you learn all your fundamental bookkeeping techniques there, it's going to be helpful for all the further levels going forwards. Okay, so without further ado, guys, let's get into what we have in store for today. Let's start with my first slide. So you probably have remember, we looked into the 5-stage of accounting system on our previous sessions. So we have the financial transactions, we have documents, then we have books of prime entry, we have ledger accounts, and the trial balance. So purpose of today's session is not any of the others apart from the books of prime entry. The books of prime entry, where you're going to look at what are the books of prime entry associated with credit sales and credit purchases. So here, let's put the slides out, because these are the one we introduced to the students on the previous session we had recorded online. So here, what we use the sales daybook for. So sales daybook happens when we make a credit sales and the business send an invoice to a customer. So that invoice itself is the official document. The invoice is the original document evidence of the transaction. So that means we are demanding your customer to pay for the goods they bought on credit. We do not use this sales daybook if you've done a cash transaction. That means when you go to a shop and you pay money and you get the goods that time, that will be called a cash transactions. We don't record that on the sales daybook. It will be recorded in what we call again a cash book, but that is for another time. But sales daybook or sales or purchases daybook, these are mostly for your credit sales and credit purchases. So here the invoices for from that particular transaction we'll be recording in the sales daybook. And then once from the sales daybook, we have the analysis column, which we're going to learn about later, and we will break them into different columns. And then what we'll do, we will record the totals from those daybooks into the general ledger in regular basis. For example, some businesses are very busy, they do that every day. Some businesses seldom busy, they'll do like in a week or a fortnight or even a month. They will total the columns and then they will post it into the general ledger. But until that time, all the transactions get recorded into the daybook. Instead of using the daybook, if you use the general ledger directly, general ledger will become much more messy. Means you have too many transactions there. General ledgers are meant to have some sort of a summary, not individual transactions. So we're going to look into how this get done. So here the goods sold on credit, and it goes into the sales daybook. From the sales daybook, what we will do, we will transfer this data into general ledger, which is your double entry account. And then also the same detail will go into your sales ledger, or another name for it, it is your receivable ledger, which is your subsidiary account. The subsidiary account which runs parallelly to your general ledger. We're going to look into that in more details later on as well. Okay, so here, for example, a detail of how a sales daybook will look like. So you have the date, you have an invoice number, you have the customer name, customer code, we have the amount of the total sales, VAT and the net amount. They're two different aspects. We're going to see that bit later on why that is important when you do that in the daybook. So, and also you have to look at it here. In the past, some of the daybooks are pretty much set. This is the only way you do. Sometimes you may have this invoice column just after the customer code or the customer name, where the business wants it. It doesn't have to follow that same format, but they will be in your daybook, so those information will be automatically can be entered in the system. We'll see an example of it later. So this is the sales daybook now. So if you look at that here, there are few transactions. So the daybook has used the date, the detail of them, and then an invoice number, a customer code, and then the amount. Can you see that here? The total, VAT, and net. What you notice here though, the total is the value of the whole sale. Means you have to remember when we're selling goods, if we are VAT registered, we have to charge VAT to the customers. We collect that VAT and we pay to HMRC on a later day. So in this scenario, the basic sales figure is only £120. This is your income. And you add the VAT of 20% to this one, which is £24, and we expect to receive a payment of 144 from this particular customer. This is what the daybook reflecting to us. So if you look at that here, there is some peculiar things about this daybook. Can you see here the invoice number? Can you see that they're in a sequence? So that means when you're going to sell to customers, and if you notice that on the chronological order, the invoice number keeps on increasing. You cannot have 901. The next invoice is 1,500. No, it has to follow that order because we are the one issuing this. This will not be same for your suppliers. Why? The suppliers may be using different coding system. They may have different series of numbers. So therefore, on the purchases daybook, when we see that later on, you'll find the code might not be sequential like we have here. But what is this accounting code? This is the code we allocated to every individual customers. It can be either saying SL or RL. SL means sales ledger. Nowadays, we use more sophisticated naming called receivables. So it will be a receivable ledger will be RL, and that will be the number the customer allocated to. So individually, every customer, they have their unique reference number, which is the account code. So what we do, once we put all of them into your sales daybook, like they have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those 5 transactions, what they will be, they entered in the system, and then they will be transferred into these GLs. Anyone think about what is this GL might be? This GL is potentially something you may have come across before. This is your general ledger. General ledger, and in the general ledger, these accounts are called RLCA, VAT, and sales. What is the meaning of RLCA? It is called Receivable Ledger Control Account. What is that Receivable Ledger Control Account? That is an account we have on a general ledger to show how much credit customer owe us. That means the all of that money in that account is something they bought it on credit, they yet to pay us. That means this is an asset account. If that is an asset account, they normally will have a debit balance on the general ledger. On the other hand, if you notice this, the VAT account, this is the VAT we collect from our customers, but I can't keep that to myself because unfortunately, HMRC, His Majesty's Revenue and Custom, they rely on this sales tax to make sure they pay for any essential services in the country. So it's a form of taxation, this value added tax. So this tax, something we collect, we owe to HMRC. So you know that is a liability. If that is a liability, what is that going to be? It is a credit entry. So as the last column, which is the net column, in this scenario, the net column is the name of your daybook, which is the sales. So the sales for you, if you remember your accounting categories, it is an income. If it's an income, according to your Alice, Pearls, or if you look at your debt click, it is a credit account. Credit account means this will be both credits, and that will be debit. So if I'm going to look at it here, this debit will be equal to these two credits. Can you see here? 816 equal to 136 plus 680. So similarly, we have the sales return day book. On the sales return day book, can you notice that here we have replaced this credit note number, unlike the invoice number before that, credit note number also, it is going to be sequential because I am the one issuing it. Here, a credit note means when we return, so when the customer return the goods back to you, in this scenario, we issuing them with a credit note. So when we issuing them with a credit note, those credit notes also get entered into this book of prime entry, which is the sales return day book. This is SRDB. And then if you also notice that here, there will be a total, a VAT, and a net. But in this scenario, the net account will have the same as I explained to you earlier, the name of the day book, which is the sales return part. So let's see here on the previous one. Can you notice the GL 1200, GL 2200? It is exactly same here. But on the third one, it's GL 4110. Before it's 4100. So slightly different means it is a different account. So you have to remember, initially that was sales. This time, this is a sales return. So we have RLCA, we have VAT, and this time we have a sales return there. But how you think the entry is going to be in this scenario? Remember, on the previous entry, the RLCA had a debit entry because more goods the customer buying from us, the asset is going to be increasing. It's going to be more on the debit side. But now the RLCA is on the debit side, the balance is going to come down. I'm going to reduce that one. It's by entering it on the credit side of my RLCA. This will reduce my assets value. So here, this will be a credit and these two will be a debit. Remember, when we collected the VAT, when we comes to sales, when we send the returns back, or we got the returns back to my customers, I need to give that VAT back as well because we can't keep that VAT for ourselves anymore because they're getting a refund. So therefore, the VAT, I don't have to pay to HMRC if there is a return. So therefore, that will reduce that liability. So that will be a debit entry. And similarly, the sales return is opposite your sales. So that will be also a debit entry there. It's basically an expense because when you give a refund, you're losing some money. Think like that way. Let's look at a couple of examples. Okay, so let me get to my spreadsheet, which I have created for this session. So here I have a sales day book question. So they're asking you here, what are the entries? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have to enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I can enter 6 datas there. So 5th of June. So I'm going to say 5th of June. And details going to be who's going to be outdoor supplies. What is the invoice number I have? 7234. The account code, yeah, I can say OS 01 because there was a list there, but I could not find that list. So I'm just going to create it myself. But now when you notice that here, the invoice is showing you it's 150 pounds plus VAT. So here, sorry, 550 pounds plus VAT. So this one is net of VAT. So VAT needs to be added onto this figure. So if I do 550 here, that VAT has to be calculated on the box. Yeah. Give me 1 second, please. I need to get to this PowerPoint. Otherwise, I can't see the... Yeah, now I can see the cursor. Okay. So here, how to calculate the VAT? VAT is going to be this times 20%. So here, this times 20. That is 110 pounds. And then here, this is going to be equal to this plus this figure. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this all the time when we do that number. So let's only do this one entry and then we worry about that later. So we have outer, so we have B1 and co. So we worry about that later, B1 and BC01. So we have how much there? 875 there. So let's look at that next one here. 12th of June. So we have lacombe. I'm going to say LR stores 01. And the amount we have here is 1,000, no, 690 pounds. Okay. The next one is on 16th of June. Weatherproof, weatherproof, and then this is going to be weatherproof limited 01, and it's going to be for 1,210 pounds. Then we have 26th of June. We have B1 again, so we put B1 again, BC again. It's the same account code for them, and then amount for them is going to be 625 pounds. And then next one is on 27th June, we have weatherproof again, WL Limited, and the amount is 1,575 pounds. So I've done everything here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do the numbers in a sequential. So what I'm going to do, I'll use this formula here. If I do this, and if I do that, automatically it gives you the number in a sequence. And similarly, I'm going to do here a formula which works out every one of that is multiplied by 20% of this number, and then what we have here is the total column. So what I'm going to do quickly, I'm going to find out what are the totals. So here I'm going to merge and center. So here, what is the total? So for the total, I'm going to do a sigma number. Can you notice this here? If I add these two numbers, you'll get that figure here. But I need to decide which accounts they be going in my general ledger. So if you notice that, this is the value of your total sales. So this your sales account. And this is going to be a VAT account. And this is going to be going into your RLCA account. So if I see these three entries, this is going to be a debit entry. These two will be credit entries. Now let's put them here. RLCA, receivable ledger control, VAT, and then we have our sales. So here on this one, the detail will be, because we're going to give a name for this, SDB. Let's say, yeah, SDB 10. I'm just going to say, no, it's the, which month is June, isn't it? June is 6, okay, 06. So I'm going to say here, SDB 06, the value we're transferring is 6,630 pounds. On the VAT account, we're going to say SDB 06, and this was transferred on 1105, and the last one is sales daybook 06 11 no, 5525. Can you notice this here, guys? These are the double entry for it. Can you see this is more than double entry? Because we have had 3 entries this time when we transferring it from a daybook. So when we do it, we don't write here sales. We don't say here RLCA. We don't say here as RLCA because there are 3 reference accounts all for these transactions. So instead of saying what is the other entry, like we normally do our debit credit. Remember, if I put capital in the bank of £5,000, we say bank debit 5,000, capital credit 5,000. But we write individual accounts opposite names on the details. But in this scenario, we're not doing it such. We are doing it the name of the daybook. So your double entry means we are referring to a daybook where this data is originated from. So this is how you enter a daybook. So if I'm going to do that for my sales return daybook, I'm going to do the same thing as well here. Outdoor supply. So it's going to be 10th of 6. Outdoor supplies. So it's going to be outdoor. This is my credit note number. credit note number is 224, and the account code is OS01. The amount we have is £75. We'll find out the other numbers bit later. 18th of July, June is still June, so I'm going to say 6, and this is going to be B1 225. This is going to be B1 and Co 01 for the value of £110. And then we have 22nd of June, Larcomb, and this one is LR or LS01. So here we will see £45. Last one is 30th of June, and this is again B1, and this is BC01. So here this is for £122. So now let's work out the VAT again. So this is going to be equal to that times 20%, and this one is going to be equal to this plus that figure. So let's do these two. Can you notice that here there is a decimal? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the prudent thing by changing that to 2 decimals, and I'm also going to do here change that to 2 decimal places, because they normally will get decimals for VAT. But there is a rule with VAT. You normally, if you have more decimals, you meant to round down. If for a business, for the retail businesses, they just round it. They don't round up or down or any particular way, but they round it to the nearest pound. Okay, that is the rules now. That's been changed recently, as was I told. I didn't hear about it. We normally have that rule. You always round it down for our purpose for the accounting, but in the retails they don't do like that way. They either round up or round down. For the purpose of us, when we're learning it, the VAT is always going to be rounded down. So now let's say here we will get rid of these 2 additional lines. I don't need them. So here let's do the total. So I'm going to say total for these 3 accounts. We have the details. So here this is going to be again on RLCA. Oops, okay. RLCA. This is going to be VAT, and this is going to be my sales returns. So here it is going to be opposite to what we had done before. This is a credit, this is a debit, and this is a debit. So if I'm going to do that here, I'm going to do the same accounts again. So here Control C. Here I'm going to say Control V. So here RLCA, this time we have given a name for them is SRDB 06, because it's the 6th month. So I'm going to say here SRDB 06, and for the value of £422 and 40 pence. Okay, so I'm going to say equal to that number. Okay, and then here in this scenario, SRDB 06 equal to that number there, and then sales in this way will be a sales returns account, and this one will be a debit entry SRDB 06, and for the value of that number. Again, can you notice if you add these 2 numbers, you should be getting that number there. So the third question is, you may ask me, in the exam, will they ask me to do such a thing? Not always. You may not have to do a daybook entry, but you may have a different style, which I have to show in a minute for you. Okay, so let's go through this, some of those exercises, and we'll do with it. But now the second part is what you think about this. This is your general ledger. This is on your general ledger. But we also have to remember we have a subsidiary ledger. Subsidiary ledger. In this scenario, this is going to call receivables ledger. how that receivable ledger will look like. So if I'm going to look at it here, I'm going to copy this and I'm going to have a receivable ledger here for people we have done a sales transaction to. So here, let me just slightly make this slightly smaller. Delete. No, hold on. Control Z. Yeah. So here, I have seen outdoor supply. So we're going to have one for outdoor, but instead of having the name, we're going to call this OS01. The next one is BC01. The next one is LS01. And then we have another customer called WL01. So let's see, I can copy this. Control C, Control V. This is going to be WL01. So we have all those information. Now, what we need to do, we need to fill that details here. So here, this subsidy ledger, it has to be a carbon copy of all my sales amounts. That means how much my customer owes me. So here in this scenario, we have outdoor supplies, we have invoice number 7234. So we have the detail as 7234. The amount is going to be the 660 pounds. Then the BC have the number 7235, and the sales figure is going to be equal to 1050 because that is the amount they owe us. So then look at that LS01. So it's going to be 7236, and this is going to be equal to this 828. Then we have the Weatherspoons, weatherproof. We have that invoice number, and that one is going to be equal to that number there. And then we have one more from B1 Limited. So here, that one is going to be equal to that invoice number. The amount is going to be equal to that number, £750. And then we have one more for weatherproof, and the last one is for that amount of invoice. Okay, so now if I've noticed here, if I add all of those numbers, 1 2 3 4, so okay, these numbers, if I add all of them, will I get the same 6,630? Of course you will. Why? Can you see these are the 6 numbers we entered there, and if you add them all together, we add 6,630. Can you also notice they're all on the debit side? So it is basically a carbon copy of your RLCA. So that means at the end of every period, these numbers should match what's in your subsidy ledger, like all of these individual customer accounts. In case they don't match, that is where you learn in the bookkeeping control unit to reconcile between your RLCA and the subsidy ledger. Those needs to match up there. Okay, so that is very important why we have this subsidy ledger. So similarly, when you have a credit note, can you notice that there is 4 credit notes here? So the outdoor supplies 225, 226, and 227. So what we need to do, the similar way on the subsidy ledger. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. Oh, all right. Okay. Copy this. This way I can copy this way. Copy. Yeah, I can do that way. So that's fine. So what we do, we already have those numbers there. So in this scenario, yeah, I think the numbers were all kind of messed up there. Give me 1 second. So what I'll do, I'll say pay special, only the values. Oh, Control Z. Pay special values. Source theme. Okay, yeah, we have kept the value there, did we? No, for some reason the values are not coming up there, so Control Z. Yeah, let me go back in there and do in the other one. So here, 90 pounds 224, which is a credit note, which is a credit entry into your RLCA. So if I'm going to go here on the outdoor, we're going to say 224 and for the value of 90 pounds. So we're going to type the 90 pounds here. So I can say equal to that figure. So next credit note is for B1, that is 225. That is 227. All right, 225 for 132 pounds. So here I'm going to say here 225 equal to 132 pounds. And then we have LS, we have equal to that figure. And then the amount is going to be equal to 54 pounds. And then again, we have one more for B1 equal to 227. And then that will be equal to that 146 pound 40 pence. Now, can you notice when we sell goods to the customers, this will increase that balance. When we give a credit note to the customers, it will reduce the balance. So once you reconcile these four accounts, your RLCA will have similar this way. So if I'm going to copy these two and then I paste it here, equal to that amount. The debits will match the debits here and your credits will match the credits in this one. So it is very important, guys. The sales daybook is used, or the sales return daybook is for anything to do with the credit sale transactions. And then also the third daybook associated with it called the discount allowed daybook. That discount allowed daybooks is basically for if a customer takes advantage of a prompt payment discount. A prompt payment discount means they're paying it early, they get a discount. We will discuss that on the next session before we do the cash books and petty cash book. Because there was an old connection story I need to explain to you before I go into further details. So similarly, we have the purchase, what is that? The next day book in our agenda, which is this one. So here, the next day book is going to be yes. Purchase daybook where your credit supply invoices are entered. Can you notice here in this scenario, the invoice numbers are not sequential. They are different because it comes from different suppliers. So the entries will be unlike the sales daybook or the sales return daybook. This is purchase. It goes into a different control account, which is the payable ledger control account. And then you have VAT and we have the purchases. But this time it's flipped. It's the other way around compared to the sales daybook. Why? When we buying goods on credit, we are creating a liability. If I'm creating a liability because I owe money to my supplier, so this is a credit entry. These two will be debit entry. So and so purchase return daybook will be opposite again. It will be similar the way we done with the sales and the sales return daybook. Purchase will be same as not same. It will be credit for the PLCA, debit for VAT and purchases, and then purchase return will be slightly opposite. I don't want to go through all 4-5 different types of it. Then obviously you know how difference that's going to make. So let's have a look at a question attributing to that one. So here, let me get to my PowerPoint Excel again. So this is a purchases daybook question here. I'm not going to do all of it. I'm going to do first three. Okay, so the last three, I'm not going to be too much worried about that because I can get into the exam style questions after that. So here, 4th of March, which is 3. It's from Taylor Supplies. Invoice number is T-1459. Account code is TS01. The amount is 527 pounds. That means the VAT needs to be attributed to that later. So what I'll do here quickly, I will pre-format it to 2 decimals. So here, if I say that, change that all to currency, 2 decimals. Okay, so I'll get rid of that 2 decimals. Yeah, 2 decimals. Okay, so we'll get to that bit later on. The next one is we have 8th of March. We have from Keating and Co. And that is the invoice number 3472. Keating Co. KC01. And then the amount is for £831. Next one is going to be 11th of March. And we have Askews. The invoice number is going to be A862, and then it's going to be AS01. You may ask me why I'm using 01 for all of it. Maybe that's the first on that particular code there. There's nothing on the same, what we call again, alphabetical order. So let's change this to this format and then put like this way. Askews, the invoice value is £689. Let's find out the VAT. The VAT is going to be this times 20%. So it is that amount. And then here, what is the total is going to be for it plus this. So let's do this 3. And then quickly, I'm going to delete all of this. And I'm going to total these 3 columns. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, now here, I'm going to quickly sum this up. We have that figure. So we have decided this is going to be go PLCA, and this is going to be for VAT, and this is going to be for the purchases account. So we're going to give this name PDB03 because that is done during the month of March. So let's go and look at the PLC here, VAT account here, purchases here. How I'm going to be entering them here, we will say PDB03. The amount is going to be for equal to that figure, which is 245640. Then the other side, now we're going to say PDB03, and that's going to be equal to that amount, VAT. And then here, this one is equal to PDB03, and then this is going to be equal to that amount there. But now, guys, you may ask me why the VAT on this debit side here, it's on a credit side. It is, of course, you know the meaning. When we buying goods, we pay VAT to your suppliers. That means that VAT that can be claimed back. So if I'm going to put the VAT account in a nutshell, all the sales daybook numbers will be on the credit side. The purchase daybook number will be in the opposite side. That means we pay the VAT of whichever the highest and take away the opposite side, and whatever left over will be the net VAT liable. We normally will not do that when we're doing the VAT return because we have to look at it as input tax and output tax. But for the purpose of VAT account, they can go all in one VAT account there. So here, this is the purchase daybook, and it's been entered clearly in the system. Now we're going to look into the exam style questions. For this type of exam questions, these are the ones you're going to normally see. You will be given this daybook already, which has been completed. They'll ask you to enter them into a box. There is information there, and sometimes there will be less information there. You don't know, but they will give you this. They're asking you what will be the entries in the receivable ledger. So they're giving you a receivable ledger here, and they're giving you all the accounts. They haven't told you what you need to do, but there will be from your pick list. So when you're going to do that in the exam, there will be a pick list there. You click on the pick list and you select which account that's going to be. Now remember, guys, look at the headings. First one says receivable ledger, next one says general ledger. So when they mean receivable ledger, they simply mean by these entries. Can you see here? These entries we made initially on the sales daybook transactions, These are the ones they want to know how much we entered into individual customer accounts. So in this scenario, you put for what do you call purpose of this question, this is the individual name. So here the name's going to be Durning Limited. Then you have Penny Yards and Co. Then we have Merriman's and Porth PLC. So we have all of those, and that is what they're asking. They didn't ask you to total anything. They didn't ask you to work out your debits and credits straight away. No, they want you to have the amount. How much the amount? The amount in this scenario is the total amount. They owe you whole of that money, 2256, and then we have 2544, and then 5808. Now what entry will be? Is it going to be a debit or a credit? So you remember when I explained to you earlier, it is the same side as you done your receivable ledger control account. In this scenario, this is a sales daybook. So the all of those entries will be into their subsidiary account in the debit side. So if you notice that here, can you see all of these are subsidiary entries into the debit side for these 6 transactions. Can you see here? Debit, 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 debit. So here the answer for this exam question, it's all debits. These are the very part the students sometimes don't understand properly, and then they get it wrong. You have to remember, on the receivable ledger, if you're posting from one day book, all the receivable ledger entries will be same side, because I'm going to do from sales daybook. That means it's all credit sales. That means all your customers now have to owe you more entries into the debit side of their balances. So that is going to increase the amount they owe. So this is the part you have to remember. In exams, sometimes this could be flipped. Instead of receivable ledger first, sometimes they ask you general ledger, then the receivable ledger after that. So here, if they say general ledger, you do it differently. So you need to make sure, read the part carefully and answer the way it should be. So here, the next one, they're asking you, what is the entry onto the general ledger? The general ledger is, remember, we said that there are 3 accounts. So those 3 accounts we need to decide upon which one is what. So remember, this is my RLCA, this is going to be my VAT, and this is going to be my sales account. Remember that there is nothing called a net account. We cannot have a net account because that's not a name of an account. It's just type we call. So here, the net account, it's going to be your sales daybook, means it is a sales account. So here, I'm going to have RLCA here, VAT account here, and sales account here. But you have to remember, there is not a particular order you have to do it. You can do sales first, and then you do RLCA after that. It's absolutely fine. So you can do RLCA, sales, VAT, absolutely fine. Whichever you do it, as long as you enter the right number, you will get the full marks for that one. So here, the amount is going to be for this one is £14,976, and this is a debit entry. And this one is going to be 2496, and that is a credit entry. Because remember, if that is a debit, these two has to be credits. 12480, and that is going to be a credit. So here, I've done that. Yeah, done that now. So in exam, you will get 12 marks for this one, and you also will get 9 marks for this one. This is an easy gimme if you are ever I'm going to get a question like this way. So similarly, we have done the sales daybook. What is the next thing we have? We have a sales return daybook. So similarly, we're going to do sales return. We're going to say, who are the customers? We're going to say Sanchez and Co. The amount is £672. And this time is Honor Limited. And this is for £384. But where we're going to be entering our debits and credits. Can you look at the logic again, guys? If your sales day book, all your customer details, the entries were gone on the debit side for sales return day book, do you think they can be on the same side? Absolutely not. It has to be the opposite side. So this is going to be credit entries. And here we're going to decide RLCA, VAT account, and sales returns, because it is the opposing entry. So this amount is going to be 1056, 176, and 880. And this is again the opposite side. Like what we've done here, this will be now flipped. So credit for RLCA, debit for VAT, debit for sales return. So that is a really good question. Now let's look at that next one. We have purchases. Now you're going to see a little bit more of this. So they're asking you on the payable ledger. So let me change it. I'm going to say here general ledger. So I say payable ledger. So here general payables ledger. Okay, so here I have to do that. Now if I'm going to do general ledger, I have to do the general ledger account. So here there are three accounts we need to look at it: PLCA, VAT account, and purchases account. You have to remember PLCA is a liability, so therefore we need to have credit entry into those accounts. So here this will be a credit entry and these two will be debit. So let's look at the figure here: 167042784, and then we have 13920. So can you notice that if we add these two debit figures, that will be equal to that credit figure here. Now let's look at that next one. So we have to look at the individual supplier account, Thorpe Limited. We have Avalos PLC. We have Parkers, and then we have Floyd and Co. What is the amount we have here? 2112, and then we have 2832 and 6144, 5616. But these will be all on the debit side? No, you're not. You're going to remember it is exactly same as this PLCA account. All of these accounts must have credit entries. Can you see that here? It is absolutely the same way we done it here. Can you notice that we have done all these three on the credit side? If I'm going to do a payable ledger accounts, they will be all on the individual suppliers, this amount on the payable ledger. Okay, so this one is a very good example of an exam style question. So let's see one more here. This one we're going to do again: PLCA, VAT, and then purchases returns. So the amount we have here, 1008, then we have 168, 840. Remember, you do not have to worry about the order. It doesn't have to be the same order. As I said, you can start with purchase return, PLCA, VAT, but just trying to keep the same order as how the day books are, so you don't have to confuse yourself over it. So in this scenario, it will be the right opposite of your purchase day book. So this will be a debit entry and these two will be credit entries. So if I'm going to look at the subsidiary ledger, I have Church Stores, then we have Thornton Limited, and the amount is going to be here 336 and 672, and here this will be exactly same as my PLCA debit entry there. So can you see here, this is same as my PLCA, and here this is same as my PLCA. Can you see these two entries also? It is exactly a carbon copy. If you add these two figures, that will be equal to that. If you add all these four figures, that will be equal to that number. So that is an exam style question. You are likely to score very high marks on that if you follow that procedure. And the last bit before we close for the day, we're going to look at it. What do you call a day book here? If they say, okay, the last five columns of the day book, so they ask you to enter something in here. I'm just going to think about it, and I'm going to fill some boxes for you, and you're going to think about what numbers come where and how to find the total numbers after that. So let's see here quickly. Let me do that number here. I will also do another column, that, and then that one. Yeah. So here on the first, okay, so today, 1st of November, so we say amethyst, invoice number 1001. Okay, for this one, it's like a puzzle. So if I'm going to say here 500 pounds for this particular transaction, and I'll say VAT is 300 pounds. You need to fill out the rest of the box. How would I do that? If I know my VAT, I should be also be able to find what is my total value of the invoice. Because remember, the VAT here is the 20%. In the level 2, they wouldn't ask you that hard of a question, but it's just good to solve some puzzles there. So I left it as a blank for that purpose. So this is 120%. And this is 100%. So here, I need to find out whether how I'm going to find the rest of the boxes. If I know the 20%, would I be able to find out what is my 100% is? Yes, multiply that by 5. If I multiply that by 5, this is 1,500. So here, the total is going to be 1,800. But what does this analysis column says? That means I sold 1,500 pounds plus VAT worth of goods to my customers, but they bought two different types of goods. This could be any type 1 and another one is type 2. So what is the missing one here? This is going to be 1,000. Why? These two will be equal to that net figure because I'm splitting those two numbers into that. In your exam, you won't get it like that way. So let me show you an example of it, which I have come across. If I can find it, not that one. Yeah, here you go. There is the question I have got from my previous examples there. So here, yeah. So they say the VAT was, okay, so let's do here, 6,240. They have given you that number there. And then they say here 5,200. They ask you to fill in the boxes. How would I do this? If I know that is my total, to find the VAT, we're going to divide this number by 6. How much is going there? 1,040. How much is the net? You can do two ways. One of them, this minus that, we're getting 5,200, or equal to that times 5, you get that same figure. Since that reconcile with that number, I don't need to worry about that because there's nothing for sales type 1. In level 2, this is how they ask you the question. Very simplest way of doing it. So I'll give you one more to think about. They give you 1,760. Okay, and they say 1,760 here. And find the rest of the numbers. How I'm going to find it? If I know these two numbers, they reconcile each other. There is no sales type 1. There is nothing there. To find the VAT, we're going to say this divide by 5, which give you 352. How much is the total? Total will be this plus that figure. Or you can times this by 6. You'll get the same number as well. This is a question you get 4 marks depending on how many empty boxes you had to fill out. You don't have to fill out everything because there's a 0 here. It doesn't mean I have to fill that out. They'll say leave the blanks as empty as possible. But anything you can put the number on, specifically these 3, columns, you need to make sure all the numbers are filled in. Once you've done that one, you'll be able to work it out. So here they give you 496 pounds here. I need to fill out the rest of the information. So here they put 2480. How much is that going to be? So this is going to be equal to that times 5. This is 2480. And this number is equal to this plus that, which is 2476. And once you've done that, what is your job is? You need to add all of these together to subtotal them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a subtotal column, and then it works out all the numbers. Can you notice that here? These two numbers, if you add to each other, you'll be equal to that. And if you add these two numbers, you get that number. And that is another exam style question. I have seen it in the past. This may be also helpful if you learn how to do this different type of day books.